the EPISD Board of Trustees. Mr. Irrobali, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I think this is a great opportunity. I've been very fortunate enough to work with the El Paso Hispanic Chamber for over almost 10 years now. And I really appreciate what you guys do for our community and engagement and just informational studies like this.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So first and foremost, why are you running for EPISD Board of Trustees? And if elected, what will be your main priorities?
So, I love this community. I absolutely love and adore the Northeast. People always laugh because they think the East Side or the West Side is the best place you can live in El Paso. And I'll tell you, we have the best view of the mountains. We have some of the nicest people and residents you will ever meet. And I still think this is one of the best locations to raise a family. I'm a father of two. I have a 13-year-old who's in 7th grade at Charles Middle School, and I have a 3-year-old that will be entering EPISD pretty soon. And that's my primary concern. I want to make sure that all the opportunities and all of the experiences that I got while at EPISD that helped shape me into who I am, they have those opportunities. And I'll extend it. It's not just about my kids and my immediate family. It's about the district's kids. It's about the Northeast kids to make sure that they can achieve what they want to, what dreams they have, but they need a district that supports them and an initiative behind it that lets their voices be heard. And then to your question, what would my initiatives be? Every time I talk to one of my Northeast residents, I tell them it comes down to 3 really important things. Number 1 is this election is going to determine who's going to hire the new superintendent. And if you look back, El Paso hasn't had the greatest track record with superintendents. Either the corruption scandal that we went through, which really deteriorated the trust with the community, the most recent resignation of Superintendent Cabrera. People just don't understand what happens, why it happens, and they feel like it's happening behind closed doors in a secretive manner. And so something that I'm committed to with them is I will find a qualified candidate. That's definitely first and foremost what we have to do. But we also need to find somebody that's engaged with our community. I live in the Northeast. I have neighbors in the Northeast. I have friends and family. If I do something wrong, my neighbors, my family, all these people know where to find me, where to talk to me, where to have that engagement with me. So we need to have a superintendent that I would like to be local. So because they live here, they'll answer these people. It's a lot more difficult to do something unethical or with a conflict of interest or anything like that when your family, neighbors, and friends are the ones that your decisions impact. And we have a lot of talent in El Paso. We have people that understand the system through and through, our successes, our failures. It's time to build a good system, building on those successes and eliminating or doing a tourniquet for those failures and stem the bleeding. The second one's the budget. One of the biggest issues that I'm hearing from my residents out here when I talk to them is a lot of them live on fixed incomes. And every year the property tax increase for the district, the city, the county, any of these organizations, it chips into that budget that they have to live by. There's no increase for them, but it makes it more difficult for them to pay their gas bill, buy food, take care of whatever issue they have, put new tires on their car. That's something that we really have to address. So I really want to get in there and look at this budget in a complete setting and see what's working, what's not working, where can we cut costs, what can we do? Because there has to be a solution. Something one of my mentors at the state told me was, there's always a reason not to do something, but if you actually take the time and you look, you can find a solution. And I don't want to be the guy that comes with well, we can't do this. I want to find a solution. We may not all like the solution, but at least one was offered and then we can engage the community on that. And then the last one is going to be really evaluating and bringing EPISD into new innovative times. And I want to do that through working with other districts throughout the nation and seeing what they're doing and maybe retool and repurpose some of their programs to fit El Paso. But I also want to do it with, integrating technology. How do we do that? We have recognized through COVID that technology is going to be a piece of education moving forward in a much larger setting than it has in the past. So we need to find a way of making cell phones and laptops and iPads not distractors in the classroom, but something that helps enable learning and understanding the curriculum. Because in many cases, the technology can take away from that retention process and you're not understanding it because you see it on the computer or whatever device it is, or it does the work for you. Example I'll give you is Microsoft Word. Spelling is going to become an issue because kids rely on the spell check. Grammar is fixed as well on Microsoft Word. And so in my profession, I actually see people that have struggles writing. And that I think is a product of the technology era. So we have to find a way that balances out the skill sets.
Okay. So you're definitely passionate about several issues. What specific experience or skills have prepared you to serve as a board member and carry out or implement these, these changes?
So I was very fortunate. After I left Andrews High School and I graduated in 2009, I got accepted to Syracuse University, who was the #1 communication school in the nation at the Newhouse School. And something that made Newhouse the school that it is that they require professional and practical experience in addition to just teaching theory. So though we were taught these concepts and these ideas and these theories behind communications, engagement, we also then were assigned clients that we had to work with directly. So these were clients that were real businesses, real organizations that needed help with communications, and we had to work with them. And so during that 4 years at Syracuse, I had clients I worked with. I had projects I had to work with actual organizations and people that needed work. So I got that there. Following that, I tried to come home like a lot of kids do, and I could not find a job to save my life. So I ended up having to go to Austin, and I found a job at the state's Economic Development and Tourism Department. And this group of people are some of the most incredible just professionals that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Just the way that they teach you to read and write, to critical think out of the box, find new solutions. It's really what has made Texas such a stronghold when it comes to economic development. And I'm very fortunate to this day to still have mentors and friends that I call from there when I have questions or things that better the community as a whole. While I was there, I managed a substantial budget. I oversaw the state's flagship program for small business forums and workshop, and I actually brought some forums to El Paso during my 3 years there. I also got certified as a contract manager for the state of Texas, and so I know how to write contracts. One of the biggest things that we're seeing, especially after the Cabrera incident of him leaving and getting that severance pay, was there were no clawback provisions in that contract or no morality clauses that prevented him from stopping him from taking that money. If he was asked to resign because of unethical behavior or because of conflict of interest, well, then we want to ensure our next superintendent doesn't walk away with that same amount of money for doing something that we didn't deem appropriate. And again, it comes down to the contract. I understand that contract was very clear and he was entitled to that money. And unfortunately, based on the contract written, how it works. So we have to go with that. And then most recently, I've been at the city of El Paso now for about 4 years. And between my time at the state and my time at the city, I really have gotten a strong look at how government operates and what the trap falls are, what are the pitfalls, what are the good things and what are the bad things. And one of the things I'll tell you is I understand to look at data. People of all interests and all groups will come and tell you, well, this is what the data is showing me. This is what we have to do. But if you actually sit there as an official and you just listen to that one take, it's easy to get lost in that narrative. But if you ask for the data that they are using and where that narrative comes from, then you can use the critical thinking capabilities that you have on yourself, and you may come up with the same outcome, you may come up with the same resolution, or you may come out with something that's completely different, and you can begin to challenge that and find a true solution to some of our problems.
So transitioning to an issue that I think everybody can agree is perplexing, the school system, the public school system, the pandemic. What is your stance on fully reopening schools during a pandemic as it continues to persist?
So it's definitely something that we have to start planning. And I'll say this, I'm a planner at heart. I love planning. Plans make everything go smoothly, in my opinion. What needs to be discussed, whether we do it immediately or over time, is we have to sit there and say, what's the strategy and what's the plan to implement this? Because if we don't have a plan and we wait till the governor or the federal government snaps their finger and say, now kids need to be in the classroom, we're going to be left scrambling trying to find a solution. I personally believe my son, who again, 7th grader at Charles Middle School, is still learning at home right now. And a big proponent of that is because I just don't feel I have the information as a parent to put him in that situation where it doesn't put himself at risk, my family's ecosystem, or his educators at risk. And that's just the lack of engagement I think that's happening across the board with the district. And again, it's very difficult in these times to talk to every parent. You see that on the campaign trail, right? It's almost impossible for me to talk to every parent in the district, in my district, District 5. It's impossible. But we can find ways to mitigate that and hit the most people. And so we need to ensure our teachers get vaccinated. We were obviously moving on that. I wish EPISD would have built a database before then so that when the federal government and the state government said we could move on it, they could instantly have implemented that strategy instead of allowing people to sign up after that point. That would have expedited it some. I'm hoping we can do the same thing with our students. Once students are allowed to get vaccinations, I hope that we can start engaging parents and have a system in place so we can expedite that. But we have to be careful, because if you rush into it and you don't have a plan, you don't have a strategy, you can shut down your entire educational institution if that outbreak is significant enough. And then something that you work so hard to get set up, you have to close back down for 10 plus days or however long is necessary before you can operate again. And then you're back at square one.
Okay. So you mentioned you're a planner. You want to plan things out, have a good strategy. So what specific safeguards would you propose to ensure that students can return to a healthy learning environment? I know you mentioned vaccinating teachers. Is there anything else in particular that you want?
So something that I've been campaigning off when talking to folks is there's something I want to implement, which is going to be called campus COVID plans. And something that I am committing to, if I'm elected, is to go sit in every school and see what the day of being a teacher in that campus is, being a student, being an administrator. And what I want to do is really map out in a diagram and in words that we can put online the system. Where's ingress? Where's egress? Where's the hand sanitizing stations? What's the rule on disinfecting? If there is an outbreak or if there is a potential high-risk contact, what's the system? How do parents get notified? How do teachers? Where do you get your temperature check? At what point is it too high of a temperature? That kind of thing. So all the information that you need as a parent or a EPIC employee up online to where you can access it. Because we already know that the first day of school is something that kids dread, or there's that trepidation or that fear over. The same applies to adults. As a parent, I still remember when my son went to school and how I felt, like, oh, this is a change. This is uncomfortable for me. Or when my daughter went to daycare the first time, I was a wreck. We have to make sure that we alleviate those concerns of parents as well. I mean, there's a lot of considerations. And if teachers feel comfortable, administrators feel comfortable, our bus drivers, our lunch, our cafeteria staff, they all feel comfortable, well, they're more inclined to focus more on the job than, ooh, I'm afraid of this contact, or, I don't know how this is going to work. And I think that's important. So definitely implementing these campus COVID plans. And then really, evaluating each classroom. We have to ensure that we have somebody in the district that has a medical background making these decisions. We can't just leave this to anybody, because this is a medical decision. This isn't a political decision. This shouldn't be a political decision. It should be based on the information that we have. And as the CDC and other state and federal organizations come out and say, this is safe, this is not safe, we need to have someone at EPISD who is a medical professional saying, this is how we enact this on a campus-wide level. And then also looking at individual campuses, because they're each their own ecosystem. Some classrooms are bigger than others. Some are smaller. Some have more students. Some have less students. We really need to start looking about how we're going to implement this fully and get our students back. Because I do think there is some, I believe, because I see it, that there is an impact from learning virtually.
Okay. So moving on from the pandemic-based questions to more, educational program questions about EPISD. What issues do you believe your district needs to address in its academic program and offerings, and what changes would you recommend?
So one of the things I really am looking at is the educational equity, we'll call it, and it's really ascertaining and understanding the type of education that each student needs. Is it equitable? Because if you do it off of equality, then we're all going to be taught the same things. But what we need to realize is there are kids that excel, there are kids that meet expectations, and there are kids that need a lot of improvement. And if we start identifying these groups and we start allocating the proper resources and support mechanisms to these students, we can ensure that they're not left behind throughout the process. And the pandemic really did highlight that. We're seeing a lot of students that were already AB students, A honor roll students. They're still excelling in most cases. I have a lot of teacher friends, and I talk to a lot of parents that have students in the system. They're still excelling. They're still doing what needs to be done, especially if they have that support mechanism at home. But for the students that were already struggling or don't have that support mechanism at home, they're getting further and further behind because they just don't have that access. And so if we do a concreted effort and strategy to identify these students that really need those resources and that extra time, I believe that we can catch them up. And I'll use something from my personal story in my life. I graduated top 10%, was editor-in-chief of the newspaper yearbook at Andress, was one of the founding members of the Peers Assistance and Leadership Program at Andress, where we set up mentorship programs at Nixon Elementary and Newman Elementary. I had all the accolades behind me. I worked my rear off. And when I got to Syracuse University, that first semester, knocked me down a couple of pegs, let me tell you, because I was not equipped the same way my classmates were. I had to work twice as hard, if not 3 times as hard, to make sure I was getting the base level grades that made me happy. And then I had to put even more work to get back up to graduating with honors, which I did. But for a lot of our kids, we need to remember there's the financial constraints. I had to work 2 jobs simultaneously to going through school. And so we keep having all these obstacles that we're stacking up against our children. And if I, who am an overachiever, and school was something that easily came to me because of just how my mind works, what about those kids that struggle? It's not that they're not smart. It's not anything like that. It's just there's different ways of learning for each kid. Some need the manipulatives in their hand to count to 10. Some need it, visually on a chalkboard. And so we need to start looking at that and making sure that we're equitable in what we're teaching our kids and what access they have. That's definitely one. And then the other one is, again, at Andrus, I'm very fortunate because I graduated in 2009. So I've been through the EPISD system very recently. And now I'm also experiencing it from the parent perspective. So where we see a lot of folks throughout, special interest groups and other folks that talk about, well, 30 years ago, I was an educator, or, this is what we see from the educator's perspective. I'm very fortunate to have that perspective, but we're also leaving out what the students feel and what the students are seeing. And that to me is most important. I had all AP classes. I was told that dual credit was not worth worth my time because I wanted to go to a private Northeast school. I still don't know today if that was true, if that was a good decision or a bad decision. But the support and the classes that I went through for AP and pre-AP didn't always provide me the enough support and information to pass these tests. And so I spent the entire semester preparing to take this test. And then when it came time to do it, I'd fall short, if just a little bit or by great numbers. And so when it came time to college, not only am I underprepared, but I'm also out of because I never got those credits. And so we have to ensure that if we're investing in these programs, that these programs are fully utilized and fully supported. Because that goes the same thing for our special education. We see the state of Texas underfunding that organization or that program, those programs as a whole. So we need to make sure we're funding them. Dual language, same exact thing, underfunded. We're seeing moves to get those programs funded, but those are our high risk populations. We know it from data that those are your high risk populations that are under service. So we need to start making sure that if we're going to invest in these, we do it the right way, and we do it in a way that's progressive and innovative, not antiquated and obsolete, because we don't want to be the district that's a dinosaur. We want to be the district of choice and innovation.
That's some very interesting insight. Now we're going to talk about something that kind of relates to the chamber. So here at the Hispanic Chamber, we advocate for the small business community. And, the workforce definitely needs educated, skilled workers. What initiatives or programs would you implement to prepare students for the workforce?
So I'm extremely fortunate to have worked in economic development for almost 6 years now. I mean, give or take a year here. But I've gotten to experience from across the 254 counties of Texas, what programs are being done to prepare students in rural and urban communities and enter the workforce. And I'll tell you, one of the things that, to go back to that question about what would I do as far as academics, there's 2 more things that I would do that fit into this question about preparing them. One is we need a class that teaches financial literacy, because as a student and as a parent, I see that, you get excited when you get your first credit card. You're like, oh man, I'm on top of the world. I can go buy all these things. But you don't really understand the ramifications of if you go out and max that credit card and what the annual fees are, what the interest rate is, and what that does. If you go max it out at $1,000, well, it's going to take you a significant amount of time to pay it back because of those interest rates. And you don't understand that. And so when that child enters the workforce, they don't understand the value of money or really the implications of what finances are and how it affects your life. And that plays a big role in supporting our small businesses, because we want kids that are going in there that understand how a small business works, the value of a dollar, and what skill sets they need to support that business. We just don't want employees going in there, well, I'm taking a paycheck home, that's all I'm doing. We want them to find the value and the growth in that organization. So that's something that I'm very passionate about, because I mean, again, I went to Syracuse University, which is a private institution. I took $100,000 in student debt because I didn't understand that. And if you apply that to anything, it doesn't have to be, private university. It could be community college. It could be a car. It could be a house. That can tie you to a location or detrimentally set you back professionally for years and years to come. And the other one is we have to make sure that our kids understand the importance of civic engagement. We need people to understand helping one another and helping your neighbor is important. We need them to understand that we live and die as a community together. You know, the old saying, it takes a village to raise a child, is absolutely true. I see it day in and day out. And when I talk to residents of District 5, they understand it, they believe in it, and they buy into it. And so we need to make sure that they understand that, because children that are taught civic engagement and community engagement through volunteer work or other some activity tend to put more effort into these opportunities that exist. Whether it be the National Honor Society, you know, a program that exists, the Peers Assistance and Leadership programs, they pursue those, they go towards them, and those tend to benefit them because they get better opportunities down the road because they meet the players of the city, of an organization, of scholarships, whatever it may be. And so if we really want to be serious about getting our kids, you know, involved in the workforce and ready to work, we have to make sure those two criteria are met. And then the third one I'll tell you is, I really want to institute a robust apprenticeship program. We need to have something like this. It's very difficult for kids, and I'm, again, personal experience. A lot of kids that I went to that were classmates in Syracuse and friends had the opportunity, because they had the financial wherewithal, to go to New York City, to go to Austin, Dallas, anywhere you think of, and have an apprenticeship or an internship where they learn, you know, practical experience. For me, every summer was work. It was work because you have bills to pay and you need to save up for college. I had to take a year off because I couldn't afford going to college, because I couldn't afford a laptop, I couldn't afford books, I couldn't afford my plane ticket. And so if we develop a robust system where we have internships for our high school students, to where they can start tapping into that experience from the great companies we have here, then when they get to high school, they will be at the same level, if not above, what these other students are at other institutions. And it can be local. And I say college, but I'm talking about even any post-secondary degree. I'm a big fan of technical schools. I think it's very important. I'll use my wife as an example. She started EPCC for her basics. She went to UTEP, where she got a kinesiology degree. She realized that she really couldn't get a job with that right now. So she went back to Western Tech and got a certification. And so there's so many ways that you can make your life, and there's not one right way for the group. It's an individual decision. It's an individual choice, and we need to respect that and understand that.
That's a great answer. So moving on from the educational programs of students to more like school board oriented issues, as a candidate for the school board, do you believe in consistently accepting the policy advice of school district staff, or being responsive to the needs of the community? Are those two mutually exclusive, or can you find a way to balance it pretty well?
I 1000% agree that I think there's a way to balance this. And I'm very fortunate, again, to have the experience that I have at the city of El Paso, because I interact with city council. And I understand that there are days when I'm working on policy or projects in the city that I will promote this and I will say, hey, this is an idea, we can move forward with this. But they have to trust that I'm doing the engagement I need to do. They need to trust I have the background I need to have for this project. They need to trust that I have everything that they would think of. But as elected officials, you have a different kind of pipeline to information and engagement from your residents. And you need to consider that. I believe you need to challenge whatever's brought to you as an elected official. I think that if, again, I mentioned this earlier, if someone brings a project and says, okay, Israel, we need to provide $1,000 per student towards this initiative because we're seeing that, you know, this is where we're hurting. Okay, well, where's the data? Where are these kids that need this? Where did you see this? Where did you get the $1,000 from? Where do you get this information? And if they can provide me all that information, that backup, well, then you know what? I very well may agree with them. But there's so many situations and experiences that I've had at the state and at the city where maybe the residents' interests were not at heart. And they're all over this. I mean, people agree with, the development when Great Wolf Lodge came, right, was coming, I should say. There were people that agreed with that. There were people that disagreed with that. You're going to find people on both spectrums on every issue. But if you actually sit there and listen, you can alleviate a bunch of those concerns by just providing proper information. But then there's a lot of questions that even I didn't think of, and I worked on that project about, hey, we need to look into this and we need to find that information, and we need to provide that in our presentation. So I think you can work hand in hand with your residents as well as your staff. Because when the staff brings that proposal to the board, I want them to have all the concerns that my residents have included in that presentations. Because I want my residents, if they see that, to know, you know what, they're thinking about us little people, as they call themselves. I talked to a lot of people, and that's, they just feel forgotten. And that's not fair, especially because, they're funding the school districts.
Okay, so that kind of leads into this next question I'm going to ask. It relates to the constituents, to the residents. How does a school board balance the need to provide a quality education with the need to respond to the local taxpayer burden? Do you believe that there's certain programs that need to be cut or funded more? How do you balance the budget?
So that's something that, as I said, when I worked at the state, I did oversee a substantial budget. And what I did in that budget is I evaluated it after the year, after I became the lead on it. I reevaluated at the end of the year to see, was there enough money for what I was trying to do? Was there too much money in other places? And then I moved it around, I repurposed it, and I got permission to do that because you have to bring back the program annually for permission. And so when doing that, you begin to realize that it's no different than any other budget. In your household budget, it's the same thing. If you need to go out and buy a car, then you are going to have to find ways to take money from other initiatives or other programs, other projects, other things in your household and to apply it to this. And so what I plan on doing if I'm elected is really look at the budget in a broad sense. And I'm going to get down in the dirt and the weeds, and I'm going to look at every project that I can and try to understand, is this project working? Is it not? Is it underfunded? Is it overfunded? And really just start ticking off where we're overspending, where we're underspending, and see if there's ways that we can balance it out without raising taxes. Because at the end of the day, every dollar that we invest in is from our residents. And it's like I said earlier, if they're on a fixed income or otherwise, it means that they're struggling now to pay for their water bill, their electricity bill, put food on the table. And that's a real consideration that we have in District 5. And so with the data in front of me, I'll be able to make those determinations, and I'll work with EPISD staff to make those determinations. But we definitely have to find a way to balance this. We just can't continue going to the taxpayers year after year after year saying we're doing a budget or we're doing an increase on taxes. We're doing an increase on taxes, because at some point we're gonna tax them out of their homes. They're not gonna be able to afford their food. And in some situations, I'll tell you of a lady I talked to this week, actually, I believe it was on Monday. She's in a situation between property taxes, the COVID relief or COVID, the pandemic. She lost her job. She can't afford school supplies for her child. And so they're using recycled paper. She'll write on one side, they'll find something and they'll do that. They tried to engage with the school to find a solution to it, and there was no solution that was put forward. So to me, I was like, well, let me go out and get something. I'll bring it over to your house so you guys have at least something. But those are real life budgetary problems that we need to address and we need to look at. And if there are programs in place where that solves that issue, well, they're not working and we need to solve that. And so it's really getting in the weeds and being committed to challenging the status quo and saying, this is a different way of thinking. This is an innovative way that we can change what we've been doing for decades that hasn't worked, because it's becoming obsolete. Education, like every other industry in the world, is going to become more innovative and evolve. And if we don't match that evolution with the people on the board and the people in the classrooms and the students and the parents, then we're going to be left behind, and it's going to be a broken system for years to come.
Okay, so this will be, we have a couple questions from Facebook. So this will be the last pre-written question before we get into those. What do you see as the major issue or issues facing District 5, specifically District 5?
So something it's really a humbling and it's an honor to sit down and talk to these residents of District 5 and get to see what issues they're having, because something that I'm seeing is the things that District 5 that you would just innately think we have problems here are not necessarily what we should be focusing on. One of the things that District 5 has always had an issue with in the Northeast in general is that we felt like we're being left behind. We don't feel like there is a true advocate or an actual interest in serving our community. I mean, you've heard it. I've lived here my entire life, except for when I was in Austin or at Syracuse. And since I was a kid, people would say, you don't want to go to the Northeast, it's dangerous. Or, the Northeast has nothing. I mean, we have a Chili's and we have an Applebee's of big box restaurants really off of Trans Mountain there. A part of that is demographics. As I say, I work economic development, I understand that. But another thing is that stigma that's been attached to the Northeast, and we're trying to fight that. And part of that goes in the investment of time, support, and resources that we pour into the Northeast. It breaks my heart. I went to Andrus, and Andrus had a big part to play in who I was and what I've become. And I go there and I have friends that are teachers there, and they tell me about how the status of their classrooms, and they're falling apart. There's the same tiles that have the water stains in there that when I was there. There's grass going in classrooms. There's things like that we're not taking care of it. And if we don't take care of it, we're going to be in a real situation, because that's the only high school we have in District 5 besides the early college campus. And I definitely want to get that addressed. And then also just equity. We have to make sure that there's a heavy impoverished community and underserved community in District 5. And we have to ensure that we are providing the resources and the equity and education to get them where they can succeed. We need to spend the time to get them there, because we have a lot of generational housing out here. We have a lot of poverty, children in poverty. We have problems with food deserts and things of that nature. The district should be the leader in getting food to these kids and providing resources, because the reality is the residents alone cannot do it. And it's engaging with people. It's building a collaborative spirit. That's something that really I'm really strong on. Not everyone's going to agree with what I have to say and what my beliefs are, but I'm willing to talk to anybody. People are smarter in education than I am. People are smarter in being a parent than I am, and I'm smarter in some other issues that other people are not strong on. But if we work together as a group, we can actually come to solutions and actually help our kids that are at risk right now. Actually solve this social crisis that our kids are having right now. Some of them are being left behind as far as social development indicates as educational development. And if we don't answer it soon, we're really going to see the ramifications for years to come.
So we'll move to the Facebook questions. We've got 2, and if anybody's watching right now, you can just submit your questions in the chat box. So I think you touched on this one element of this earlier, but what are your thoughts on financial literacy and professional networking for college students and beyond in El Paso? So I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, financial literacy. I mean, from my personal experience, and even just friends and family that that I have in my circle. I mean, it would have made a tremendous difference in my life if I actually understood how to balance my budget, how to manage a household budget, to do a net loss and gains, and even just what my income was. But I worked 2 jobs, as I said, when I was at Syracuse University, and it was probably about 40 hours a week I was working from that, including weekends. If I actually knew how to manage everything that, what was coming in, what needed to come out, is this necessary, is this not necessary, the ramifications that credit cards have on you, I would have had more time towards my studies, more times towards extracurriculars or things of that nature that would have maybe pushed me a little bit in a different path in life. We'll never know. I'm very happy with what I accomplished, but for other students that don't have that just, are just going from a 9-to-5 job, it just helps. It helps to know what you can do and what you can't do, and how to save. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we're seeing, and I see it in my district all the time. Even in my family, we live paycheck by paycheck, and that time that paycheck is disrupted, much like it did with the pandemic, you're left in dire straits. And so, in a situation, again, I'm a planner, right? So, and part of resiliency is if you have a plan in place and it's a steady line, or it can be moving up. When a crisis hits you, you either drop because of the shock, or you can maintain at a stagnant level because you've planned for this. And there's even some cases, if you plan hard enough, you can continue a gradual incline. And those are the kind of resilient strategies that we need to have in place as a district. As far as the professional connections, things of that nature, go back to my internship program that I would love to do. I know Workforce Solutions here locally has something like that. I'd like to build up and do a stronger partnership. Because I would love for every student to have an internship course or something along that nature by their senior year, to give them that practical experience, to let them see what it's like working in the real world. Because I see it when I have interns from EPCC or UTEP and I'm working with them. There's basic work etiquette that they don't understand. How to write an email. Being timely is a very big thing. Those are issues that if they have this professional experience or this internship, they can fix that issue while they're students still. Then when they're trying to enter the workforce and they're making lasting impressions that can really stop them from getting a career going if it's bad enough. And I'll use this example. I had an individual in our program that was looking for an internship about maybe a couple months ago, and they completely missed the interview. And I understand there were outlying circumstances and what have you, but just the lack of communication, not letting us know in a normal professional setting, that could really damage you for a long-term engagement. And it was good that she learned it with us, and it was good that we were able to show her. But it's hit or miss. You have to learn through experience. None of us want to listen and say, hey, the people that have gone through it in their life, they know better than us. I don't like saying my dad knows everything, but he tells me all these things all the time. If you do that, it's gonna blow up in your face. And what do? Let it blow up my face, and then I learn not to do it again.
I can definitely relate to that, the dad comment. Okay, so we're going on. I mean, we're a little over time. I think we have time for like one more question. So this is about. Okay, try to find a way to phrase this. There are YouTube videos mentioning that El Paso is a family-oriented place, but complain about low wages. Any comments? So I guess, how can the school district raise wages? How can educators help raise wages, but also maintain the family-oriented nature of El Paso?
So I think something we do see, and this is one of the reasons I chose to raise my family, and I plan on living in El Paso, because we love our families. I laugh because we don't go to the stores alone, which was a big issue with the pandemic, but we don't go to the store alone. We call our cousins, our sisters, our siblings, our mom, dad, abuelitas, whatever it may be, and say, hey, do you want to go to the store with us? And that's that we make an outing of it. And so in the cultural side, we definitely do have a family oriented mindset. And that even extends to our generational housing, the way that we, stay at home when you go to education. That's not hard to higher schools of education, post-secondary degrees. That's not something that is accepted all across the United States. And I've seen it, and I've talked to people that realize that. So with that in mind, we are strong family oriented there. But when it comes to the wages, we have to realize that there's a very precise, I would say, formula to really kind of get to why our wages the way they are at in El Paso. We have to look at the demographics. We have to look at what the median county wage, and has it grown? Has it become stagnant? What's occurring there? What are the type of jobs and industry that's coming to El Paso? So those are all criteria that look at wages. But I will tell you, from an educational standpoint, if we prepare our students, and I'll use this, the city of El Paso has 6 targeted clusters that businesses that we try to bring in. And a couple of them are tourism, healthcare, business services, advanced manufacturing, advanced logistics, and then defense and aerospace. And when we look at these things, we have places like Prudential that came to El Paso. They pay above the county median wage. They pay pretty well. They pay really well, if you ask me. If we prepare our students for when Prudential's looking for an expansion, to be prepared to jump in that organization and be business ready, then yeah, we can bring those jobs here, and we can ensure that those jobs are brought to El Paso. But what we see time and time again, and we hear it about the brain drain, we need to ensure that we have jobs to match up with the talent that we have. I mean, I went through that when I got back from Syracuse, couldn't find a job to save my life. The only offer I got was a sales rep at Verizon. That was the only offer of the 30 different job applications I put in of the response I got. And so what did I have to do? I had to leave. But one of the things I always tell people, I love youth leave. I love when they leave because they learn new ideas. They learn new concepts and ideas, much like I did. But I want them to come back and bring those ideas and concepts here and make our society better, our community better. And with those expertise, again, we can bring new industry about. There's the relationships that you can build, much like I built relationships with the state's economic development department and other economic development organizations across the nation. Those partnerships can oftentimes lead to a new business or a new organization coming there that can pay higher wages and bring higher quality of life amenities to our community. And so it's really working in tandem. We have to be collaborative. We have to work with our unions, our special interest groups. We have to work with anyone that has a say and a stake in the success of our kids, the city, the county, to bring wages, to bring sure that our curriculum is here and it matches exactly what the workforce needs. And if the need of the business community is up here, we need to find a way to elevate our curriculum to match it. Because if what we have right now is we have in certain industries, the need is here and our curriculum's down here. And so they're not able to hire outside of high school directly into these positions because we're underpreparing our kids. So if we find a way to be innovative and match them, and like I said, that internship program is a great example. And I'll use Prudential again as example. If they are hiring 50 people a year and EPISD can lead the way with matching 50 to 100 qualified interns to Prudential, senior level, well, maybe those 50 kids or those 100 kids get jobs with Prudential right outside of high school. And that would be an amazing thing because they can start their career. And they can do that, simultaneously with going to school if that's what they want to do. They can at least start building careers for themselves. And it applies with high school and college. It's all the same. As long as you build those connections, meaningful connections, as one of my mentors always tells me, it matters. And you can actually map out a successful life for the kids and throughout the district. And more importantly for me, I want to ensure that every kid in District 5 has the incredible experience that I had going through the EPISD institution. Because I talked to a lot of friends that was graduating my class or even just acquaintances, and not everyone had the same experience I had. I was very fortunate and blessed that I had this structure at home, in the community, and at the district to push me to what I wanted to do. But those stories like mine, they mean something, they're important, but the stories about people that didn't have those support mechanisms are even more important because it tells us where we can be better. And I always believe you can get better. When you stop trying to grow, you have become complacent, it's time to move on. Something my dad has always told me. and it's something that I live my life by.
So unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Mr. Irrobali, thank you for joining us on behalf of our chamber and our CEO. Thank you for sharing your insight and your thoughts and your ideas. We really appreciate it.
And thank you guys again. Once again, the mission that y'all have and just the impact you have. These are y'all organizations, the socioeconomic problems that we have in El Paso, or even just social issues that we're encountering. And by giving candidates and all candidates a platform to come and talk to a broader audience, a wider audience, it definitely helps. And it makes me be a better candidate because I'm held accountable for the things I say, and people have a chance to now engage with me either through my Facebook page or through other avenues. Again, people can call me at my phone number, which is 915-345-9247. But without this opportunity, I wouldn't have been able to meet these people. So thank you for that.
Of course. And best of luck to you on the rest.